I needed to be able to measure and understand what was going on in knowledge work. So I started to combine tools and frameworks from my training as a sports scientist, but also tools from physiology and neuroscience to try and understand what was going on. And this led me to a question that continues to fascinate me. What on earth is going on in knowledge workers' brains? Well, before we explore that question, I've got a question for you. Have you ever said to yourself, I feel like my brain is going at 1,000,000 miles an hour? Sound familiar? I think many of us can relate to that. Well, I'm going to disappear off stage again because I've got a device here that can actually measure what is going on in our brain. So this, if you could peer in and see, it's called an EEG headset. Basically, it can measure the electrical activity of your brain. There's 14 channels in this headset. If I turn it on and try and fit it to my head and position it and mess up my hair, then I should be able to acquire a signal. There's these saline-soaked pads, 14 of them, and it's picking up on the electrical activity of my scalp. And the amazing thing is that electrical activity can be broken down into brainwave frequencies, which if I switch this software over, and if it works okay, we should be able to see. There we go. So each of these lines represents a channel from this EEG headset, patterns of the electrical activity in my brain. And we can convert that data into brainwave frequency bands from slow to fast. So if I switch screens, you can see some slow waves, some theta waves, going into slightly faster alpha waves. And then we've got this very important beta brainwave band, which I'm going to talk about a bit more in a moment. We've got low beta, high beta, and then you can see a few gamma waves popping up as well. It's interesting to see how it kind of spikes and changes when I kind of turn and look at it and pay a bit of attention. But this is all very interesting from a scientific point of view. I'm kind of measuring the speed of my brain. But I'm going to show you something else in a minute, more of a kind of artistic representation that can be quite informative. Before I do that, though, I just want to give you a quick kind of 101 on brainwave frequencies. So the slowest waves that we often see are in this delta brainwave frequency band. Hopefully you won't see any of these today. This is associated with deep sleep. Hopefully you won't see any deep sleepers in the audience either. Maybe I should have put some headsets on all of you and we could keep everyone honest. But we're going to move from the delta waves into slightly faster theta waves. We see theta waves associated with relaxation, with meditation, with creativity. Faster still, and if you notice these colours are starting to get a bit warmer, that'll be important in a moment, we've got alpha waves. We see alpha waves when we're in a calm state, maybe if you're taking a break, for example. Then faster still, warmer still, we've got beta waves. This is the kind of dominant brainwave frequency for our normal waking state. But if you remember back to that previous screen, those beta brainwave frequencies are kind of split into two bands. Low beta, when we're kind of calm and engaged. High beta, when we're actually starting to get stressed. And then we've got gamma waves. We probably won't see too many of those, but warmer still, we see this associated with higher order mental activities. Now, I'm going to switch to another piece of software now, and you'll be able to see my brain activity in real time. But these brainwave frequencies are going to be represented as different colors, cool to warm. Okay. So here you can see a representation of my brain activity. And a whole cascade of these quite cool kind of alpha into beta waves. What happens if I try and make myself a little bit stressed? Yeah, you can start to see some of this kind of red, the high beta. If I maybe try and think about something that makes me laugh, you might see a bigger cascade of activity. But a lot of the activity is focused around the front part of my brain, the prefrontal cortex. You can think about this as the control center of the brain, a part of the brain that I'm particularly interested in. Because as knowledge workers, that's part of our brain which is responsible for so many of the tasks that we engage in during the average day. And the amazing thing is that we can use this technology to measure what is going on during the workday and understand how to structure the workday in a way that will support both well-being and performance. So those factors, rather than being in conflict with each other, start to be complementary. There's some really interesting research into this, and in addition to kind of measuring and representing it in this artistic way, we can also record brain activity continually and understand, for example, when people are paying attention. So you can see now another representation of my brain activity, attention at the top. So you'll notice a kind of spike over to the right-hand side, which was associated with this demonstration starting. There's a bit of a delay in this representation. You'll also notice a bit of a peak of stress. So you see this purple line, it says ST right down at the bottom. Look at that spike there, about 110. When I started this demonstration, I was panicking about whether this headset was actually going to work and connect, and thankfully it did. Otherwise, maybe you'd see smoke coming out of it or something. But my point being, we can actually use technology like this to get an insight into the day to support both well-being and performance.